Hi, my name is Jo Daniel and I'm an inspector with the RSPCA, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about a career with the RSPCA as an inspector. So I'm going to talk to you about my career so far with the RSPCA, a day in the life of an RSPCA inspector, and also what skills you need for this type of work. There are some requirements as well to apply, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the training's like. So I've been with the RSPCA since I was 13 years old. So first of all, I was a volunteer at the Wildlife Hospital. That involved working with the wildlife, cleaning out wildlife. Quite often we were involved with releases and the day-to-day feeding and care and veterinary care of the animals. Once I was 18, I was lucky enough to get a job as one of the first RSPCA ambulance drivers, known as animal collection officers. So our primary role was to collect sick and injured animals and take them to the nearest veterinary surgeon or to our own RSPCA wildlife hospitals or domestic animal centres. I then spent a year in one of our control centres where the calls from members of the public come. So we receive over 1 million calls a year from the public looking for help and advice, which we're able to give. But also we assess those calls to see whether we need to send an officer to attend. So with rescues and collections and with complaints, allegations of cruelty or neglect, we need to be able to listen to the members of the public and see whether our actual attendance is needed. And then finally, when I was 22, I started training as an inspector. So while I was carrying out all those different roles, I obviously saw the work of the inspectorate, and I was really inspired by what they did. I'd considered being a veterinary surgeon, I'd considered other careers with animals, but the genuine difference that inspectors were able to make to the lives of animals and the influence they could have over animal welfare was really the path that I wanted to choose. The variety of the work we do is obvious. One day we could be rescuing a swan, the next day we could be dealing with a multi-animal cruelty complaint, and the next day we could be doing a careers talk or judging a pet show. So what really interested me was that variety of work. And as you can see from the photographs, I've been doing this a very long time. So a day in the life of an inspector, as you can imagine, no 2 days are ever the same. We very often don't know what we're going to be coming on to. So we get calls passed to us from the control centre, and they broadly go into 3 categories. So the first is complaint work. So in the first photograph, you can see there we've got a multi-cat household. A couple had got a male and female kitten. They hadn't got them neutered, and those cats had had litters, and those litters had had litters. And by the time we arrived, we had 32 cats to deal with. A really lovely part of our job is we help people as well, almost as much as we help animals. So these people were overwhelmed by their situation. They didn't know where to start. So as an organisation, we are able to offer help and advice. So help with neutering. I sat down and discussed with them how many cats they actually wanted to keep. We neutered those and we assisted with rehoming the others. As you can imagine, people don't like having allegations of cruelty made against them, and dealing with complaints is the most volatile area of our work. We are often met with hostility. We are sometimes met with aggression and violence, and part of the skills of the role is to de-escalate that and try to help the animal. That is always our focus, is trying to help the animal. And often with complaints, only part of the problem is seeing the situation as it is now. We need to unpick how that situation has occurred in order to help resolve it. So the next large area of our work is collections. So this can be as simple as a bird already confined in a box, or it can be a lot more complicated. This is a photograph of the back of my van in springtime. It is often like this. We can have call after we call to sick and injured domestic and wildlife, often orphans as well. So hopefully you can see that we've got a swan in there, there's a cat, there's a hedgehog, there's also a bird in the box. So in that situation, our job is to get those animals assessed and then taken to the most appropriate establishment as soon as possible. So sometimes it's a veterinary surgeon, sometimes it'll be one of our wildlife hospitals, and sometimes it'll be one of our domestic centres. But it's a nice part of the work. We meet lots of interesting and nice people who are also helping animals. So the final photograph there is the rescue side of our work. So we've got 2 cows in a ditch there. We come across animals in unimaginable situations on a daily basis. I've spent all night trying to dig 2 dogs successfully out of a drainage ditch in a storm with the assistance of the fire brigade. We are involved with abseiling to rescue animals stuck on cliffs. We often are involved with rescues on water. So we are looked upon as the experts when we arrive to assist an animal, and our priority and our focus is always the welfare of that animal, but we do often call upon other agencies to help us. So we're lucky enough to have the cooperation of the fire brigade. We often use tree surgeons, chimney sweeps to help the animal out of the predicament that it's in. So every day our focus is helping animals like Star. So this was a call that I had regarding 3 dogs that were being kept in a back garden. They'd been taken on by a young man who really didn't have the understanding of what those dogs needed. He'd placed them into an outside kennel. He hadn't provided them with bedding. He'd fed them, but they were living in squalid conditions when I visited him. They were okay body-wise in themselves, but certainly their welfare needs weren't being met at that time. So I gave him extensive advice and I returned later that week. And that's when he made the very brave decision that he couldn't meet the welfare needs of these 3 dogs. He had taken on much more than he could cope with. And he made the decision to sign them over to us. So as you can see, Star in that first photograph, her nails are overgrown because she wasn't walked. The conditions are really dirty. And a marvellous part of our work is being able to directly affect and influence animal welfare. So those 3 dogs were taken straight to one of our animal centres. They were treated, assessed health-wise, and then when they were well enough, placed up for adoption. And that second photograph is Star very much having her welfare needs met in her new home. And as you can imagine, those are the jobs that make this career really worthwhile. And I'm proud that I know that there are hundreds of situations like this happening every week with all my colleagues working hard around the country. Lots of animals are helped by us, but some really stick in our mind more than others. One such little dog was Billie. So Billie was a young spaniel that we had a call about because someone was keeping her outside in all weathers. She had no shelter and she was limping. So one of my colleagues went along and met the owners and found out that she did have an injured leg and the owners hadn't sought any veterinary treatment for her. We worked with the owners to make sure that she went to a vet, but they weren't able to cope with the costs or the repercussions of the care she needed, so they signed ownership over to the RSPCA. I got tasked to collect Billie, and there she is looking very sorry for herself with a very large bandage on a very little puppy leg. She needed surgery, and so the RSPCA set about raising the funds necessary to be able to send her to a specialist veterinary centre. Her leg injury had been left a long time, and so this made healing really difficult. And unfortunately, we received the phone call to say that it was inoperable and her leg sadly had to be removed. However, this story does have a happy ending. When I picked Billie up, there wasn't the room at the animal home for her, so I brought her home with me. And there she has stayed. So she's made a full recovery. She really doesn't know that she's only got 3 legs, and she lives a very full and happy life. And again, it's a daily reminder of the work that we do. Picking up animals and bringing them home is a kind of occupational hazard for an RSPCA inspector. And my family are well used to having lots of bed and breakfast guests, but some are more unusual than others. I don't normally keep them. I normally just foster them until they can be found new homes. But one call in particular was very unusual. I was called to a field in the middle of nowhere where a sheep had been intentionally hurt and needed urgent veterinary treatment. Winnie was so scared and traumatized that despite encouragement, she just wouldn't move. And so I had to carry her across 3 fields in order to get her the treatment she needed. And then I took her home. I tried everything I could to find the owners. I put up posters, I made local inquiries, but of course in the meantime she needed to receive the care that she needed. So we nursed her back to health, and she did recover with time and with care. But as you can imagine, having a bleating lamb running around the garden was a little bit of an unusual situation for the family, and one that they still talk about. So what skills do you need to be an RSPCA officer? You need strong people skills. I think you need to enjoy meeting new people. You need the ability to remain calm under stress. I think you need to be able to de-escalate situations. You need to empathise with the situations that people get themselves in. Lots of people take on animals when they're able to and they're financially stable, and then circumstances can change. And our primary role is to help people and to help those animals. And as I say, the focus is always on doing the best for those animals that we come into contact with. We need to be able to remain very calm and professional under stress. We can deal with very threatening people. We can deal with very stressful situations. It's physically and emotionally demanding. We come into this job because we care about animal welfare, and then we are faced with some of the most awful scenes we can imagine. So you need to be emotionally resilient as well. And you need to be confident and have the tenacity and integrity to keep going back and dealing with situations. Not all are resolved immediately. Some take weeks or even months to get to the standard that we're looking for. So you certainly need the tenacity to persevere with those situations and keep going out there to try to help. So we've talked about the physical and psychological demands of the job. The physical side of it is also in the rescue work. So we've got the rescues that are on cliffs where we have to abseil. We have the rescues where we are on boats and have to work on water. We also have to work in difficult weather conditions. Often animals get in trouble when the weather is inclement, and we'll be out there for hours on end trying to help them. So again, you've got to be physically fit and able to cope with that. We are primarily lone workers, so you need to be self-reliant, you need to be able to think on your feet. We have got support from our colleagues and our management, but day to day we are normally by ourselves, and it is down to us to sort out the situations that we're faced with. And we also work inevitably on social hours. Animals don't get into trouble 9 to 5, so we work shifts, we work evenings, we work weekends, and we work through the bank holidays. So that is also something to consider when looking at a job with the RSPCA. So what do you need to apply? At a very minimum, you must have a level 2 qualification in English language, GCSE, grade C or above, grades 4 to 9, a full current manual UK driving licence, and the ability to swim 50 metres fully clothed within 2.5 minutes. That's a level of fitness that we need because we want to be rescuing the animals. We don't want to be rescuing you. What is the training like? So the training is amazing. Some of the stuff we do, you would pay good money to do. You go on boat courses, you do the abseiling courses, and also you get trained by people who are expert in their field. So you come into this job because you've got an interest in animal welfare, and you have, you know, the best giving you that knowledge that you need to go out and do the job. So as long as along with the practical animal handling and rescue skills, you learn animal husbandry, veterinary care. Obviously, you need to have a broad knowledge of the animal welfare legislation. And unfortunately, there are some situations we deal with where we do have to take prosecutions because that line has been crossed and welfare offences have been committed. So whether that is with domestic animals, wildlife, farm, transit offences, we need to be aware of the legislation and act within the law at all times in order to bring people to court to be dealt with appropriately. And we also prepare those case files, so it's up to us to put the evidence before our headquarters in order for them to make a decision. So final tips. Helping animals is really rewarding, and so is helping people. So I think if you're thinking about this as a career, certainly get as much experience with working with animals in all circumstances as you can, domestic animals, farm animals, horses, etc. And also helping people in difficult circumstances. As I said, it is as much about working with people as it is about working with animals. So any experience in those areas, that would be really great. And through my experience, I think the best inspectors are compassionate, intelligent, calm, and really thorough, and never stop putting the animals first. So there are YouTube pages that you can look at. There's lots of videos of the work of the inspectors, so you can see the practical applications of what we've been talking about, the rescues and collections, and some of the complaint work we get called to. And also you can go onto the RSPCA website, which offers a lot more information about a career with the RSPCA. I hope this has inspired you to think about a career in the RSPCA, and I wish you well with whatever career you choose. Thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.